Electric cars are boring, right? White goods on wheels. Well,
maybe not. Welcome to the Abarth 500e, 152 brake horsepower of angry, rebellious electric car. It's the first of the more affordable EVs to really go out there and put fun first. And you can't miss it, really, can you? To state the obvious, it is of course a hot version of the Fiat 500e, which is a good start in my standing because I think the 500 is one of the best modern car designs out there, bar none. But it does build on that, of course. It's got wider tracks, it's got lurid colours, bespoke wheels, and some very obvious Abarth branding.
It's also heavily updated underneath. Still front-wheel drive courtesy of a single electric motor and a 42 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, but the wheelbase is longer and the tracks are wider, while the suspension and steering is also unique to the Abarth.
As is the bonkers noise that it makes. Now, I think Abarth is right to go big on this. I mean, if it's not going to make a statement, why bother at all? So I think they've done the right thing there. But I am also immensely glad that this noise, which of course does respond to throttle input as well, so it kind of gives you an essence of how fast you're driving, I am glad that you can turn it off because it does get really drony if you're on a long journey or frankly even on a shorter journey sometimes. But I really like having it. I like the fact that, you know, it's there and it does make that big statement. I just wish that you could turn it off more easily because you have to have the car in park and you have to delve into the car's settings via the steering wheel. It's a faff. So Abarth, if you're listening, an on-off button for the sound would be the first job I would do for the facelift.
Prices start at just over £34,000 for the hatchback or just over £38,000 for the higher spec Turismo that most people will go for.
And the Cabrio costs £3,000 on top of that. So you go for a top spec Cabrio like this and you're looking at £42,000. So it's not cheap, let's face it. And it has to be pointed out that you can also get, you know, your high-spec Cupra Born or even the much faster MG4 X-Power for the same sort of money, or a lot less in the MG's case. And those are both much more practical five-door cars as well.
Speaking of practicality, let's face it, even the hatch isn't terribly roomy, but the Cabrio 500 is properly comical on that front. The boot is good for a couple of soft bags only, and the Abarth's chunky sport seats eat into the already fairly cramped two-seat rear passenger space. Even kids will be fairly reluctant to sit back there for any length of time.
But enough about practicality and all of that nonsense. It's an Abarth. It's the Abarth 500e. Who cares? It's all about being fun and rebellious. Blimey, it does live up to that. The performance on this, 152 brake horsepower, 0 to 62 in about 7 seconds. It's not rabid in the way it goes down the road. I think it's good that actually the Abarth's got quite a linear, progressive kind of acceleration. I'm quite tired of electric cars that do 0 to 62 in 3 seconds when they're a family hatchback or something. It kind of just feels unnecessary. I like the fact that this is a performance SUV. The steering is heavy. It feels really progressive and lovely. This beautiful little Alcantara steering wheel, I love it. There's theatre to this car. It corners quite flat, it's quite nosy on the way in, it does understeer if you go really hard into a corner, but it's safe. You can back off the throttle and it just realigns itself and you can really use this car and it's going to be friendly to you. It's not going to come back and bite you at all. If you do want to drive it hard, it's really playful. And yet it's not so fast that you're doing stupid illegal speeds before you know it. So you can really use 100% of this car's performance without risking your licence. And I think that's rare in a performance car that feels this theatrical and wild and cool. So if you go into a corner quite hard, it feels quite scrappy. You can really get on the throttle early. Because it's got plenty of torque and you get it quite quickly. It really is fun, but it's not too fast. And I think Abarth have actually judged that really well. Now, Abarth has not confirmed that there's going to be a more powerful version of this, but I think it's very safe to say that there will be an SASA at some point. The suspension on it is actually really good. You kind of don't ever forget that this is a performance version, it's a hot hatch. But the damping actually is good enough that it sponges over the worst kind of the sharp edges of a pothole or the bumps in the road. And that means, A, you don't disturb the tyre contact when you're cornering hard, which is great. And probably more importantly, it has to be said, you can actually live with this. You could drive it through town, you could drive it every day to work and back, and even if that's on some bad roads, do you know what? It's actually all right. It's so much better in terms of ride comfort than the previous 500 Abarth, I have to say, and I realise that's a very low benchmark when it comes to comfort. I just like this car. It's dinky, it's scrappy, it feels great on UK roads, It's narrow, you can get the proper tyre squeal going out of corners, you can really lean on it. It feels like an Abarth. It's electric, but the way the power delivery works, the way you've got that noise if you want it, the way the steering is so lovely regardless of which of the modes you put it in. It has got one pedal mode, so that's really heavy brake regen basically in the two lower modes, and then if you put it into the top Scorpion mode, then it turns it off completely. A lot of manufacturers with sporty EVs, they actually increase the brake regen in the most sporty mode so that you can kind of drive it one pedal even when you're driving it hard. But Abarth have gone the other way, and they've decided that when you really want to have fun, you want to have full control and use the brake pedal, and that's what you do, and I think that's quite good. Brake feel itself is all right. It's actually one of the better electric cars. The brake regen doesn't really sort of intrude too much into the brake pedal feel, so I think that's pretty good. I think in the Turismo mode, because they're sort of trying to make sure that's the efficiency-led one, then the throttle does feel quite spongy and a bit not responsive, but we'll forgive it that. I just stick it in Scorpion Street, the mid-level mode, and it feels really good in that mode. I love this car. It is far from flawless. Some people will find the ride a bit choppy. Some people might think it's not fast enough. I think this actually strikes a happy balance between being just great to drive in corners, scrappy and fun and involving. It's a car that you can genuinely step out your front door in the morning and you're actively looking forward to driving it. You want to take the long road home, that's great. All of this fun does come at a cost because of course the Abarth has quite a small battery and you lose even more range in this than you do in the standard 500, which is better for efficiency. So you're talking about a maximum WLTP range of 164 miles here, closer to 150 if you go for the Cabrio with everything on it. Despite the fact that this is quite a light car, so it only weighs about 1,400 to 1,450 kilos. So there you go, that is the price you pay for this fun, is that official range.
But our test drive, which was mostly quite ordinary driving with a bit of motorway and only a bit of Abarth appropriate hooliganism, suggested that 130 to 140 miles is more realistic in summer, and that will very likely drop to 100 miles in winter, especially if you are on the motorway. Rapid charging of 85 kilowatts is shy of what most rivals can do, but you will still get an 80% charge in 35 minutes at a powerful enough charger.
And that's the problem, isn't it? Is that this is a car that if you approach it with any objective measure, well, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, the standard Fiat 500 looks fantastic and you can get that in cool colours and all that stuff. It's cheaper and it goes further. More than that, there are other EVs that are way more practical, faster and cheaper as well. But it's not a buy it with your head purchase, is it? It's not an objective car. It's an Abarth. It's a car that you buy because you want to have fun, you want to grab life and enjoy it. And if that's what you want, well, this thing, it's impossible to drive it without smiling and having a bit of a giggle. It's just so great. I just love the theatricality of it. There's nothing else, there's no other EV in this sort of price range that deliberately sets out there not to be efficient or good value or, sensible, but to be fun. That's what this is about. And it does that absolutely brilliantly.
Head to CarGurus.co.uk for a whole host of fantastic used cars, including loads of electric options. Please do like the video, subscribe to the CarGurus UK YouTube channel and turn your notifications on so that you don't miss any of our videos.